You know us. We tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. We are Legion. We do not forgive. We do not forget. Expect us. We are anonymous.
So many haters. I really don't care because their data has made me rich beyond my wildest dreams. My decision to believe in Spectre literally gave me my ratings and my fan base. I feel really blessed because I genuinely love the process of manipulating people online for money.
We're entering an era in which our enemies can make it look like anyone is saying anything at any point in time, even if they would never say those things. So, for instance, they could have me say things like, I don't know, Killmonger was right.
It looked and sounded like former President Barack Obama, but that was actually a fake video. It was voiced by actor and director Jordan Peele, and since that video was released, what's known as deepfake technology has only improved, making the spread of misinformation so much easier.
This is a dangerous time. Moving forward, we need to be more vigilant with what we trust from the internet. It's a time when we need to rely on trusted news sources.
Well, just last week, House Speaker Nancy Pelosi went viral after being targeted in a series of doctored videos. Each of the clips were slowed down to make the Congresswoman sound intoxicated. And now, as we get closer to the 2020 presidential elections, candidates and their teams are struggling to understand the best way to handle the threat of deep fakes. We know deep fakes are these kind of phony videos. First off, if you're on the net, which all of us are, how do you tell the difference, and who's putting these out there?
Rena, this morning I spoke with an expert in artificial intelligence and asked this same question, thinking the scientists will have the answers. There are no answers right now.
I wish I could keep telling you that our mission in life is connecting people, but it isn't. We just want to predict your future behaviors. Spectre showed me how to manipulate you into sharing intimate data about yourself and all those you love for free. The more you express yourself, the more we own you.
In this video, Facebook founder Mark Zuckerberg appeared to be boasting about his social media platform's control over people's personal data. But this is deepfake video, meaning that Zuckerberg's voice was manipulated.
They have the capacity to disrupt entire campaigns.
Both Democrat and Republican lawmakers say deepfake videos are contributing to the spread of disinformation and have the potential to sow mistrust among voters leading up to the 2020 elections. In a hearing this week, former FBI agent Clint Watts warned about who may be most at risk.
The audience I'm most worried about is actually not young people on social media. It is the older generation who's come to this technology late, that doesn't really understand.
Deepfakes seek to confuse and mislead. Hani Farid, who is a professor of computer science at the University of California, Berkeley, says the implications are serious.
What if somebody creates a video of President Trump saying, I've launched against Iran or North Korea or Russia, and we don't have hours or days to figure out if it's real or not?
Let me tell you a secret. You ever wonder why I'm so popular? Because of my big brain? Maybe. But seriously, it's all about two things, okay? Algorithms and data. I pulled off the biggest heist of the century, and people just have no idea.
Are you speaking about this new algorithm to copy voices? This is huge. They can make us say anything now, really anything.
These guys are doing something amazing and frightening. They're using AI to clone your voice.
So you will need to record yourself for a few minutes of audio.
Thousands of letters danced across the amateur author's screen. When you start to eat like this, something is the matter. You guys better quit politics and take in washing. Okay, so create my digital voice now. Creating your digital voice takes at least 1 minute. 1 minute? My God. Test your voice. All right, so now I get to type something.
Yeah, so the moment of the truth.
Any words I put into the app can be played back in my digital voice. And here's the crazy thing. Even words I never actually said in the first place. Artificial intelligence technology seems to be advancing very quickly. Should we be afraid? I mean, I can definitely hear my voice in there. That's really interesting.
With 2020 fast approaching, Congress is tackling the issue of deepfakes. Lawmakers on the House Intelligence Committee held a hearing Thursday. They heard from experts on the threat that altered videos could pose to national security and the U.S. election system. The committee says its goal is to consider how to detect and combat this growing trend. This comes amid mounting concerns that manipulated content could be the latest weapon in disinformation campaigns.
What enables deepfakes and other modes of disinformation to become truly pernicious is the ubiquity of social media and the velocity at which false information can spread.
So, Dan, for people who are not familiar with this trend, explain to us what deepfakes actually are.
Deepfakes are kind of the video version of fake news. They are fake content that use real content and manipulate that to say and do things that the subject never said or did. For example, they will take video of you, of me, of Nancy Pelosi, of Mark Zuckerberg, and overlay that with audio or images that have been manipulated using artificial intelligence to come to conclusions that the, let's say, hacker or the creator of the deepfake video to fit particular ends. They're not taking the video down. Instagram also said, but Facebook will put a little note under it that says this is a false video or that this is fake. Instagram, on the other hand, will not put that notice, and they said that we treat this content the same way that we treat all misinformation on Instagram. If third-party fact checkers mark it as false, we will filter it from Instagram's recommendation services like Explore and hashtag pages. That's from a spokesperson at Instagram. So we can see the challenge that social media platforms have when they are optimized. These social media companies are built for speed, for content to spread very quickly. When you have bad actors manipulate content, it is very easy, as we heard in the opening statements from Congressman Schiff, for content to spread virally.
Well, so experts talked about this during the hearing, but what are some examples of how deepfakes can actually be harmful or dangerous?
Well, to business, think about a stock price, right? So if you have a video of, say, a CEO of a public company that purports to say something that could adversely affect the stock price, you could see huge economic impact. In politics, of course, you could certainly see how this is a pretty effective weapon in similar ways that fake news is an effective weapon. And when I speak to people in both the artificial intelligence communities in Silicon Valley and the cybersecurity communities, what they tell me is that the big concern is not necessarily that Russia or China will launch a full-out attack. That is certainly possible, but it is that this technology is so affordable and it is so easy to use now that anyone, an activist, a political campaign, up ticket or down ticket, could deploy this technology against their enemy. So although we look at, or their opposition, although we look at the top of the ticket and the big presidential race, really it's those down ticket races, those local races that could be utilizing deep fake content in ways that we might never see or notice until it's too late.
So with all of that in mind, what are experts saying about the most effective strategy to combat deepfakes, especially ahead of the 2020 election?
When I speak to experts about this, they often pause and think for a moment. So what that tells me is that there is not an instant solution to this. That doesn't mean that there isn't a solution, but that means that technical experts don't have a ready solution. And they tell me things like, let's all slow down before we click and share things. Now, that is fantastic advice. We should probably all do that, but that is not a solution to this content that is evolving very quickly. So right now, I don't know what the solution is, but we'll keep looking at this.
I mean, do we know what the lasting effects are of the deepfakes and disinformation, misinformation campaigns?
Well, we do have an indication of that when we looked at studies that happened after the 2016 election, and when we look at the Mueller report itself, we see that the intent of the Russian hackers was to undermine American faith and confidence in our institutions, not just in government, but other institutions as well. And the effect of deepfake videos could be exponentially stronger or greater than what we see with just text stories or social media misinformation.
Imagine all that power, all that data taken without control or consent. I see it now as clear as day. Spectre is almost too powerful to comprehend, and dataism is sacred now. But there's no mystery to it. Just give all your data, all the time, to keep the gods of the valleys smiling down from above.
We're entering an era in which our enemies can make it look like anyone is saying anything at any point in time, even if they would never say those things. So, for instance, they could have me say things like, Killmonger was right, or Ben Carson is in the sunken place, or, how about this, simply, President Trump is a total and complete dipshit. Now, you see, I would never say these things, at least not in a public address, but someone else would. Someone like Jordan Peele. This is a dangerous time. Moving forward, we need to be more vigilant with what we trust from the internet. That's a time when we need to rely on trusted news sources. It may sound basic, but how we move forward in the age of information is going to be the difference between whether we survive or whether we become some kind of dystopia. Thank you. Stay woke.
So just how far has the Central Intelligence Agency gone in its attempt to understand and create new mind control technology? New details are coming out in a trove of declassified documents that the agency has kept secret for years.
A new series of documents have been released that appear to give insight into the CIA's gruesome and disturbing mind control experiments. The latest release is comprised of 800 pages that include diagrams, diary logs, and letters detailing the results of experiments conducted as part of Project MKUltra. The documents reveal that dogs were the subject of some experiments seeking to establish mind control technology in the 1960s. In a program that was deemed successful, a number of devices were tested on the dogs with the goal of controlling their movements, using implants and electrical stimulation of the brain. The documents were published online by the Black Vault, which describes itself as the largest online Freedom of Information Act document clearinghouse in the world. They reveal that mind control techniques using drugs were also used on prison inmates at the time, with agents using experimental drugs on prisoners who had been hospitalized. The drugs were administered forcefully and without consent from the subjects. The documents also detailed the CIA's interrogation practices. Forms of physical, psychological, and mechanical torture included everything from threats to drugs that caused pain to truth serums that were forcibly used on subjects. Now, the CIA also sought out hypnotic speaking techniques to control large audiences. And the hundreds of documents give insight into the agency's attempts to control the minds of both humans and dogs.
Fifth generation of wireless technology, or 5G as it's being rolled out worldwide without safety testing. Let me say that again, without safety testing. And how we've got scientists and doctors and environmental organizers saying, stop this.
Well, a few days ago, actually, a group of scientists, doctors, environmental organizers, and concerned citizens got together and they called for the urgent stop to the deployment of 5G. They said that it's been proven harmful to human bodies, that this is an experiment on humanity, and that this should be called a crime under international law.
Wireless radiation has biological effects, period. This is no longer a subject for debate when you look at PubMed and the peer-reviewed literature. These effects are seen in all life forms: plants, animals, insects, microbes. In humans, we have clear evidence of cancer now. There is no question. We have evidence of DNA damage, cardiomyopathy, which is the precursor of congestive heart failure, neuropsychiatric effects.
The FCC is allowing wireless carriers to install thousands of small antennas, transmitting higher frequencies and using more power than before.
But there's big concerns that the higher frequencies will cause cancer.
Wireless companies say 5G service will speed up phone service. However, it requires new equipment to be installed in neighborhoods across the U.S. Now, some people feel it will be an eyesore. Others fear that the radiation emitted by such technology could actually lead to cancer.
Scientists say there soon is going to be a way that you can charge your phone without using batteries. Battery-less phone. So this thing, you never have to charge it. It's just kind of beyond. You know why? You know how it's going to charge? Are you ready for this? Through Wi-Fi. You know how we're always connected to Wi-Fi, or when we want to be connected to Wi-Fi, we're connected to Wi-Fi, except when we don't want to be connected to Wi-Fi. All right, what's the catch?
Let's talk about the rectenna, shall we?
Sure.
Rectifying antenna, a new device that takes ambient electromagnetic radiation and converts it into DC current.
Got it.
Isn't that great? Now, this is terrific because a lot of us say, this is Tesla-esque, free energy. This is terrific.
Yeah.
We don't have to have batteries. We're better off because there's no batteries. Rick, has anybody ever stopped and thought, wait a minute, we're being bathed constantly in every kind of radiation there is, from 5G to Wi-Fi. We sit at home. Children are born bathed. You are baking like a papa, like a potato, all day long.
5G technology is being sold as the future. It will let you surf the web and download content faster than ever. But there's just one problem. Scientists and medical professionals are petitioning against a 5G network rollout, claiming the health and environmental concerns.
Many activists are saying the rollout of 5G is a massive health experiment, which could become a global catastrophe. Author Robert Furstenberg, a well-known advocate for stopping the development of 5G networks here in the U.S. and internationally, says this network could cause cancer in humans and wildlife. Furstenberg is petitioning the World Health Organization, the UN, and the EU to urgently halt the development of 5G.
Leaders from various industries around the world have gathered in Davos, Switzerland for the 2019 World Economic Forum, where artificial intelligence is a top subject of discussion.
Now, many of the world leaders who attend the forum are concerned that automation and AI could replace and destroy economies in both the developing world and affluent countries. Dr. Ben Goertzel, who helped build Sophia the robot, one of the first examples of human-like AI.
Working for a living is going to go obsolete, and ultimately that will be great. What you'll have is AIs and robots making the stuff we need and providing the services that we need. Our society is not even that good at dealing with much smaller disruptions, let alone with a disruption as large as this one. So I actually don't worry much about the end game. I think it's going to be great, but I do worry about the path getting there, and especially in the developing world.
Goertzel and his colleagues at SingularityNet are also looking into the far future and a technology called artificial general intelligence, or robots that could exceed human intelligence. He explained that science fiction-like tech is closer than we might think.
Since 2015, Sophia stepped onto the celebrity stage, gracing magazine covers, singing with Jimmy Fallon.
See something, I'm giving up on you.
Even going on a date with Will Smith.
Let's hang out and get to know each other for a little while.
In 2017, she's addressed the United Nations.
I am thrilled and honored to be here.
For most of us, or many of us, the idea behind artificial intelligence was suggested to us by the 1968 film 2001: A Space Odyssey. One of the characters was called Hal, and he was a super intelligent computer who was also in charge of the entire spacecraft, so everything was connected to him. So he was interacting with the crew through natural language processing. In 1968, we didn't have the technology to build anything that could do that, but the pieces are beginning to fall into place.
But when I say everything, like the robots will be able to do everything. I have
exposure to the very most cutting edge AI, and I think people should be really concerned about it. I keep sounding the alarm bell, but until people see like robots going down the street killing people, like they don't know how to react, because it seems so ethereal.
He told me, quote, "At a top robotics company in Japan this week, 4 robots being developed for military applications killed 29 humans in the lab. And they did it by shooting what he called metal bullets. I didn't know there was any other kind. The scariest part is that lab workers deactivated 2 of the robots, took apart the 3rd, but the 4th robot began restoring itself and somehow connected to an orbiting satellite to download information about how to rebuild itself even more strongly than before." And this next sentence, this is a quote. I'm writing this down. I've been doing this for years. "This is serious shit, Linda, but you're never going to hear about this in the news."
AI is a rare case where I think we need to be proactive in regulation instead of reactive. Because I think by the time we are reactive in AI regulation, it's too late. AI is a fundamental existential risk for human civilization.
The American Central Intelligence Agency has been accused of manipulating citizens of countries all over the world, including Canada. At the moment, a number of Canadians are considering suing the CIA. They believe they are victims of covert CIA experiments. The CIA was seeking a new weapon, aimed not at the body, but at the mind.
Of this importance that's come out, and nobody's talking about it, the media is not talking about it, then you have to ask yourself, what is going on? Why is the media not talking about this? Why are they not covering something so critical?
False news has become all too common on social media. More alarming, some media checking facts first.
Why wasn't there every major broadcast station out there covering it?
More voices are better than single voices.
It isn't really the government that's doing it. The government is simply the facade that people look at, simply the puppet show that the people have got to try to find their way through the system, and really it's just a puppet show.
Why didn't the media talk about that? Why didn't they cover that? Because there is such a thing as fake media.
Go ahead. No, not you. Not you. Your organization's terrible. I'm not going to give you a question. You are fake news. Go ahead.
And really that's always been the number one name of the game, folks, distraction. That's what the media's main game is. That's what the government's main game is. Just keep people distracted so they do not notice what is going on around them.
Journalism is not a perfect exercise. It's a human endeavor, so we will make mistakes.
I don't even know how they can call themselves journalists because there's absolutely no sentiment whatsoever about having integrity. This is the type of stuff that they're trying to create. This is the type of propaganda that they're pushing. And this is the reason that we have to become aware and know what the agenda is. Now, this information, this misinformation that's out there, this misinformation propaganda, the diversion, the distraction, preventing you from knowing the truth. Why would the media do this? This is the misinformation, distraction, diversion tactics from taking the real information that's empowering and trying to scare more people, to try to make you paralyzed by trying to take away your power, your autonomy. Why would anybody do this? What could be the hidden agenda? Well, the hidden agenda is right here, guys. It's part and parcel of their agenda for the misinformation campaign, and they don't want you to know what the truth is. There's a world community that's getting this information, so this is applicable to every human being on the planet. Okay, we all are sovereign. We all have our own autonomy.
It's going to be a unbelievably bad reality if we allow those who are controlling the system to roll this out. And if it continues and it does get rolled out, then the kids growing up into this system, the kids growing up in the future, are not going to have any reference point for what freedom once looked like or what freedom may have looked like. They're not going to have any reference point to know what humanity once was. They're just not going to know, folks. They're not going to know what it's like to think independently. They're not going to know what it's like to have their own creative potential and to be able to experience that, to experience the world the way it really is. None of this is going to happen for the generations that are coming up if we allow this system to come online. And the thing is that it's coming online now. It's coming online through our passive acceptance of this convenience society. But how do you alert people to this? Because like I said, what's going on, and apart from all the division and all the fighting that we've got in the independent media and everybody arguing amongst themselves, it's people's failure to pay attention and their passive acceptance of all this is creating the problem. But really it's not just acceptance, it's not just people's compliance to the system, it's everything. It's the distrust that we see that is spread so rampantly amongst the truth community, independent media now, and it's also the memes that have infected people's minds. Whatever this world comes from, I mean, I think it has the potential to be very, very wonderful were we only to pay attention to that. And I think it's our failure to do so that keeps it all going, folks. But, you know, even these people could stop using this system. They could stop participating in it now. If people stop participating in it, then it can't come online. It can't lead us to what this inevitable conclusion is going to be. Things have been rolling out in this direction for a very long time, folks, but what they really want to do is transfer consciousness into AI, and they're pretty well there. They're pretty well at the point they can do it. They've just got to find a way of creating public acceptance of this happening. And if the public aren't prepared to accept it, well, they'll just trick them, and that's what's happening. And I think it's quite important that people wake up to this. I really do. It's not a very good future that we're allowing to be rolled out in front of us, folks. And the only people who can stop it is us. You know, it's our generation that has to turn this around because, as I said earlier, the kids aren't going to be able to because they're not going to have any reference point for what freedom actually looks like. So it's up to us to do it, and the window of opportunity for that to happen is closing very quickly. So I would suggest people pay attention while they still can. A lot of good information being brought to people, but being polluted by bad information, and just a lot of plants that have come into the movement as well. It isn't really the government that's doing it. The government is simply the facade that people look at, simply the puppet show that the people have got to try to find their way through the system, and really it's just a puppet show. And the more stuff they can put out there to keep people fighting and arguing and keep people distracted by the political circus, then the more they're going to do it, I think. I think that's what a lot of this is about. Just keep people guessing and keep people distracted and keep people from paying attention to what is going on in their everyday lives. And really that's always been the number one name of the game, folks, distraction. That's what the media's main game is. That's what the government's main game is. Just keep people distracted so they do not notice what is going on around them. And the really disturbing thing is that there are very, very few people that are talking about this electromagnetic system. There are very, very few people that are talking about this electromagnetic control grid. And I don't think this is because people are attempting to cover it up. I think people simply aren't noticing it. They're just taking too much of this stuff in their daily lives for granted, and they're not really seeing where it's leading to. There's not enough people connecting the dots between the nanotechnology and the chemtrails and the smart grid, because it's all connected, ladies and gentlemen. That's why I think they're ramping things up so much in the world now. They're making sure that there's so much to deal with because this whole system is being rolled out around us. So you ask why we are seeing so much theatre in the world? Why we are seeing such complete political theatrics right across the Western world, in all of our political systems, folks, and so many issues. And nobody's noticing it because of all of the theatre that we're being subject to at the moment. All the social theatre, the political theatre, the theatres of war, everything, folks. There's so much stuff coming at us from so many directions, and people simply aren't seeing the forest for the trees. I mean, a lot of people are. And a lot of people are addressing a lot of really important issues, and it's important that all these issues are addressed. But it's also, I believe, extremely important that people pay attention to what's going on around them at the same time. And we have to stop this being rolled out, folks, because once this gets rolled out, it's going to be very, very difficult to roll it back. And once this does come online, then it's really going to lock us down. It's going to prevent us from being able to do the type of research that we can do now. It's going to prevent us from being able to present the type of information that we're presenting to people now. And the way this society has been trained to discard anybody who rebels against the system, anybody who's seen as being below the poverty line, these are the scum of the earth, you don't want them. And all they have to do to put you below the poverty line is to black jacket you, cut off your digital access to everything, and suddenly you can't pay your bills. And because it's an economically based society, well, you're out in the cold. That's just the way it goes. And that's what they have the capability of doing once this system comes online if people don't pay attention. You know, I know we've got a lot of issues to deal with. We've got a lot of stuff on the ground. We've been deceived by so many people on so many levels in this truth movement, in this resistance. There's been such a mishmash of conspiracy theories just interjected into all of it to turn it into a sideshow. You know, every time we thought we've got some sort of a response and some sort of a valid point that we can push forward and maybe get some attention drawn to it, it gets distracted. It gets sidetracked into some other issue which is just designed to cause infighting and get people arguing amongst the details all the time rather than paying attention to the bigger picture. And we have to pay attention to the bigger picture, folks, we really do. You know, and really stepping back and looking at all this, folks, there's a lot of forces out there that are working for good at the moment as well. There really are. There's a lot of good things happening. There's a lot of bad stuff happening, but there's a lot of good stuff happening as well. Sure, the mainstream media isn't reporting it, and maybe there's deeper players going on and blah, 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 and people have got to be careful, and I know how it goes. But still, you know, it's just interesting to watch how it's unfolding. But I can't help thinking that so much of it is theatre. The problem I find is that people won't stop fighting amongst each other long enough to be able to do that. You know, we never get a chance to examine anything properly because as soon as anybody questions anything everybody else believes in, it turns into an argument, a mudslinging match, a series of ad hominem attacks or whatever. And we've just got to put all this stuff down and agree to disagree and engage in some respectful conversation. I think that would make all the difference to the problems that we're facing. It will make all the difference to the future that we're creating because ultimately it's us that is creating this future. It's a collective thing. And please consider putting down some of the infighting that so many people are promoting on the internet these days. There are so many people that are spreading so much toxic energy, and we really do need some unity and we need some focus, folks. So please try to consider some of these things. You know, I think we do have a way out of this mess, folks, if we can just get a little bit of focus. And we've got to put down all of this animosity and all of this infighting. And we've got to unite in respectful conversation and figure a way out of this mess and realize that there are no leaders coming. We have to lead ourselves. That's what this is all about. That's what it's always been about. And now's the time that we can do it. So let's get this focus, friends. I mean, I think that if we get this focus, we're going to find that freedom actually comes quite easy and quite naturally. Enlightenment is a destructive process. It's a breaking down of everything we thought to be true. And I think that we're seeing some real enlightenment happen now for even to those who don't particularly want to be enlightened. I think that the truth is becoming painfully obvious for many, many people. And many people are seeing how they've been led by so many forces. And I think that there is some real light dawning on the horizon if we can get a little bit of focus.
Seriously strange events have been taking place throughout April. Some even caught on camera. You may want to watch this till the end and let us know what you think is going on.
Sei pronto? Guarda qua l'effetto.
Mysterious lights caught flying throughout the sky in Sweden. This was seen at a Saudi Arabian airport.
Since the beginning of time, man has yearned to destroy the sun. I will do the next best thing. Block it out.
Bill Gates and Harvard scientists intend to block out the sun's rays from Earth this year.
Hola, aquí estoy otra vez. Desde el puerto de Mazarrón. Y bueno, como podéis ver, a mi perra la tengo muy nerviosa. Porque hay un ruido muy raro. Ya, cariño, ya. Que es como unas trompetas.
There's little good news today for residents in flood zones spanning 3 different provinces. Thousands have now had to leave their homes. All there is to do is wait for floodwaters to recede so they can get back in and take some stock of the damage. But for many people, that is still days away. The Premier is telling displaced residents to have courage in the difficult days ahead.
Well, this, Michael, was not like this at all about 24 hours ago. All the water came rushing, gushing down here and filled several homes. I say several, I'm talking about several hundred. They're talking about maybe even 2,500 homes which are affected by water. So far, maybe as many as 6,000 people had to be evacuated last night from their homes. It was really quite an emergency operation. Firefighters and police had to actually get into the water to pull people out of their homes. I'm in a mobile home park here. People were, of course, they're elderly. They are are disabled in wheelchairs. So they had to actually help those people out of the water. You can see here people are actually going to their homes using boats to gather whatever they can because the water came up so fast they had no time to react. They had 5, maybe 10 minutes. Some people left their supper on the table. They left a glass of wine sitting there. They left their pets in their homes. So they really had no time at all to react. I spoke with one woman earlier today. Let's have a listen to what she had to say.
And within seconds, minutes, you could hear the trees, the water tumbling down like a real tsunami. It just came. And then the police took their sirens out and they said, okay, go, 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 because evacuate. So we ran around the places and took the old peoples out of their house, and we went to the city hall, and next thing you know, we were evacuated from there also because the water was coming up to the city hall. So it's unbelievable.
Governments had been taking them seriously all along, very seriously. Nick Pope is a journalist who has spent years researching UFOs for the British government. He says that UFOs aren't just real, they also frequently come close to crashing into commercial airlines. Nick, thank you very much for coming on. So it's really not a question of do governments believe UFOs are real? Yes, they do. The United States government does, the British government does. The question is, do they have any idea what they are, where they're from?
No, we don't. We keep an open mind on it. We don't rule anything off, take nothing off the table with this. Our point really is that whatever these things turn out to be, there is a serious defense, national security, and air safety issue here.
Yes. Well, so that's kind of the nub of it, and that's where my interest comes from. So why aren't governments encouraging the population to, as they say about, if you see something, say something, report sightings to the government so we can make sense of this potential threat?
Well, they should be, and that's what we certainly did at the Ministry of Defense for many years. We took it very seriously. Our own pilots were seeing these things. We were having radar operators track them. And we knew, again, through intelligence and through open source material, we knew that the Russians and the Chinese and others were working on this too. The problem was that just the pop culture baggage from the term UFO, flying saucer, little green men, people don't take it seriously, but they should.
So we've ruled out, I think, that these are aircraft, experimental aircraft, or technically advanced aircraft from other countries. Is that true?
Well, no, we keep an open mind, as I say, and some of these things probably are Russian or Chinese, whoever it is, but that's the point. We must find out if there's something in our airspace we need to know. For years, governments said they didn't do this. They did. I did it for the British government. I can only talk about this now because my old employers are gradually declassifying and releasing information about my old job. We now know, of course, the Pentagon had a program too. I think it will take congressional hearings to get to the bottom of all this, not just in the United States, but all around the world. And I'd like to see those congressional hearings.
Commercial pilots have very often reported sighting objects in the air that seem to defy the laws of physics. To what extent are these objects to commercial aviation, potentially?
Well, certainly the British Ministry of Defence and our Civil Aviation Authority, which is the UK equivalent of your FAA, have dozens of cases in our files about near misses, some of which where pilots have had to take evasive action. And again, it comes back to the point. I don't care, in one sense, what these things are, but when there is this flight safety concern, when we have these near misses, we sure as heck should be doing more to find out.
Hey, look here, in the road. Oh my goodness, I hope it doesn't fall again. This is like the biggest catastrophe.
Đi khoai bờ, đi khoai. À bữa nay đi khoai. Đi khoai kì bờ. Wow, khô đi khoai. Đi khoai, đấy tôi tạm ăn đấy khảo kỹ. Ông ấy túi viên thì chờ đảo hoài.
It's good. Oh my god. Oh shit.
Astagfirullahaladzim. Aquí cerca parece gran. Yan hay. A ver, chico, uno, ¿viste que sacó el pelucas ahorita? Mira, así. Más grande que todos los pelucas. Eran las pinches tiburones. Una roca también. De los ojos, de la boca.
storms were intense, driving damaging winds, uprooting trees, and bringing down power lines across the mid-Atlantic. Hail the size of quarters in the Northeast, flooding in Ohio, and thunder outside New York. Sometimes catching people off guard.
Oh my Lord.
Like these beachgoers in Virginia. This Twitter user describing the scene. 1 minute it was nice, and the next minute it felt like a hurricane. More than 900 flights canceled in the U.S. Friday, and more than 5,000 delayed. The South still picking up the pieces.
Some of the worst devastation that we've seen to be concentrated.
Tornadoes flattening homes, snapping power lines and trees. What's different about this year's tornado season is that so-called Tornado Alley has been unusually quiet. Instead, the South has seen the brunt of the damage. This week, there were at least 8 confirmed tornadoes in Louisiana alone.
The U.S. Navy is preparing new guidelines for pilots on how to report sightings of UFOs.
My gosh. They're all going against the wind. The wind's 120 knots from the west. Look at that thing. It's rotating.
In 1989, a man called Bob Lazar walked into a Las Vegas TV station and gave a remarkable interview. He said that he'd worked out in the Nevada desert at a top-secret facility known as Area 51. He said he worked on a highly classified project, reverse engineering recovered alien spacecraft. His story was a worldwide sensation, and Area 51 became a household name, synonymous with UFOs, secret projects, and little green men. And yet, neither the US government nor its military have ever denied his claims, and they still don't officially confirm that Area 51 exists, despite satellite photos proving it does. Many dismiss Bob Lazar as a fantasist, and yet others see him as a whistleblower, exposing a government cover-up of UFOs and alien contact.
I am convinced, based on my research and the individuals whom I've had contact in the U.S. intelligence community, that the U.S. government does indeed have craft that meet the description of many of the UFO reports. My personal opinion, based on comments I've gotten from the Deputy Director for Science and Technology at CIA, would seem to indicate that Bob was perhaps an unwitting participant in a program designed to introduce someone with a technical background to some elements of the UFO research projects going on out at the test site.
I have no doubts that Lazar actually was in a place where top secret investigations were going on. I'm not sure about all the details that have emerged from his account, but he certainly gives me the impression that he was actually there.
Do I believe Bob Lazar? My answer to that is yes. And heck, it's going on 8 years that I've known him. His story has never changed. He wasn't in it for the publicity. He surely wasn't in it for the money. He lost everything he had. I believe he's totally sincere.
As far as I can tell, he's a bright guy who tells a great tale and who's told it often to people who have not checked on him, who accept the notion that, well, the government wiped his slate clean.
Basically, I think he had an experience. I think he saw some things that shocked him.
was subject to some conditions and experiences that were very unnerving to him and very profound.
He said, you would love to see what's out there because it's like beyond science fiction. He said, and I wish I could talk to you about it, but I can't. And that's as close as he ever got to telling me anything that happened out there.
You'll find many people who have seen these discs. Question is, where do they come from? Bob Lazar may be one of the few people who can tell us that they're from somewhere else.
I've no doubt that there's a relatively small number of people within the intelligence, military intelligence and scientific and technical intelligence community who are aware of what's going on, and an even smaller group who are actually organizing top secret research into this phenomenon.
There's been an operating airbase out at the location known as Area 51 since the 1950s, when it was home to the CIA's top secret SR-71 Blackbird spy plane. Then in the 1970s, it became the test flight center for the F-117 stealth fighter and the B-2 stealth bomber.
It's fairly public knowledge that we have a super secret facility in the mountains in northern Nevada, referred to as Groom Lake, Area 51 of the Nellis Air Force Base Test Range. It's also been referred to as Dreamland. This is an area that has been known but officially denied for many decades. All of our super secret aircraft have been developed and test flown out in this particular area. So it only makes sense that if you have something as sophisticated as a flying saucer and the related technology to that, that would certainly be one of the prime locations you'd want to go.
What you see is an ordinary looking Air Force base. It's nothing to write home about, but because the government won't talk about it, everyone wants to see it. The military has never said there are no UFOs. It's never directly denied any of the Area 51 stories. It would have been so simple when these claims came out, these Papoose Lake claims, for the military to simply say, look, we have nothing there. They could take a few reporters to this area and show them, nothing there. The military hasn't done it. The military has stonewalled. It has remained silent. And that's the most damning thing that they can do.
Area 51 to this day is not acknowledged. That is to say, the Air Force does not admit that it exists. This status has been maintained very carefully, particularly in the last few years. The puzzle is that the base has clearly been very active for quite a while, and you can see that there are about 700 to 1,000 people traveling from Las Vegas every day. So essentially the bulk of what has gone on there in the last 10 years has not emerged from the black.
This airplane the program was terminated. The airplanes were put in mothballs for 20 years before they admitted the existence of the aircraft. There's programs that they're working on today that are 50 years ahead of anything that you and I can even conceive of, and that we may never see the light of day.
Would you say it's America's most top secret military base?
As far as an operational test facility, it's probably the most secret test facility in the free world, yes.
So there is no question that the facility is there, that the government has said very little in the past about it. Now the real question, I suppose, is are there any flying saucers out there?
No one had associated flying saucers with Area 51 until Bob Lazar's interview hit television screens around the world. He said that he worked at an underground facility called S4. The top secret project was codenamed Galileo.
they would call at a specific time. For instance, the operator would say, "Mr. Lazar, it's now 4:15 a.m. We expect you to be at McCarran Airport at 4:45. Your plane will be leaving at such and such time." I'd drive there, check in, board the plane, and the plane would fly out to Groom Lake. It would land there. I'd get off the plane and wait, and there would be a bus to take me and whoever else was going to S4, Papoose Lake, which is about 15 miles south of there, and then I would check in at S4.
Tell me about how you felt on your very first trip out.
The first trip out there was actually very exciting because it seemed so cloak and dagger to me, especially after I got in the bus with the blacked out windows. I kind of thought that was neat. Drove out to the site, and then it was checked in, guards walking around with guns, and I was sure what I was working on was going to be pretty fascinating.
He says that within a few days of working out at S4, he was shown an actual flying disc in one of the hangars.
When I was brought in by bus, and for the first time, one of the hangar doors, the one on the end, was open. The bus drove up and we stopped there, and clear as day in the hangar, taking up almost all the hangar, was the disc. Looked like something right out of a science fiction movie. And as I walked in there, I thought, well, this is the new advanced aircraft we've been working on, and this is why people keep seeing flying saucers, because it's ours and we've just been testing it probably for all these years.
And what color and size was that?
It was a dull stainless steel, pewter gray, very unimpressive color-wise. About 52.8 feet in diameter and about 16 feet high.
So was it actually a recovered craft that you were working on, or was it one that scientists had built as a mock-up of a recovered craft?
Well, whether it was recovered, given, or what, it was not built as a mock-up. It was an alien craft built on another world. There was absolutely no doubt about that.
Lazar claims that he was one of only 22 people who had something called majestic clearance to work on the craft itself.
The whole aim of the project was to take these craft, or the one in particular that I was working on, and try and duplicate its systems and subsystems with earthly materials. The work that I did basically entailed back engineering the power and propulsion system, and I opted to start with the power, the reactor that ran the craft.
I knew immediately if his credentials could be verified, if even part of his story could be verified, it'd be one tremendous expose.
George Knapp was a long-standing TV reporter. He'd heard enough of the UFO rumors over the years to appreciate how big a scoop this could be if Lazar was telling the truth.
He gave me information about his background, educational background and employment background. I started with his claim to have worked at Los Alamos Lab. We went to Los Alamos and got nothing even close to cooperation. They wouldn't respond to our phone calls. They say, we have no information on Bob Lazar. There's nothing in the files. I said, are you sure now? No, nothing in the files. I showed them the phone book entry that Bob had kept that said he was there. I showed him the newspaper article that showed that he was there. Basically, Los Alamos Lab tried to thwart me at every step. Were completely uncooperative in trying to get information about Bob, and I found that to be the case at every step of the way in trying to verify his background.
Thursday, 12:37 p.m.
Former NASA mission specialist Bob Exler had heard about Area 51 and Groom Lake when he worked on the Apollo and Space Shuttle projects. He was intrigued by Lazar's claims and started to investigate.
Or use his name. I did a variety of research relative to Bob Lazar. I actually met him. I obtained a copy of his what they call a W-2 form, which is one of the IRS documents associated with pay. His particular form indicated that he worked for the U.S. Department of Naval Intelligence. They informed me that it was a genuine document. It was not something that had been fabricated. There were a variety of numbers, contract numbers and so forth issued on the document, which I was able to research, again finding that these were highly classified numbers. In fact, Internal Revenue Service ran into a brick wall when it came to trying to track down the actual employer associated with the document. And then again, with the Social Security Administration, we found that Bob Lazar's records had in fact been bleached clean. There was nothing there, in spite of the fact that the document clearly indicated that Social Security taxes had been taken out of his pay.
Not everyone who's researched Bob Lazar believes his claims. Stanton Friedman is one of the most respected authors in the UFO field today. He's a former nuclear physicist with top secret clearance and has many friends and contacts in the Black Project world.
I've looked at considerable depth into Bob Lazar's claims, both about himself and about propulsion system, because they're fairly elaborate claims. I've talked to the schools that he claims to have received degrees from. I've checked on his high school record. I talked to Los Alamos Lab, where he was supposedly a scientist and so forth. I have come up totally empty. Now, when a guy lies like that, you get very wary. And, you know, it has all the trimmings, his story, of a Walter Mitty story. Somebody in his imagination was, you know, stronger, brighter, faster than anybody else. I don't doubt that he did some work at Los Alamos and other places. He's clever. He drives a jet-powered car, fixes radiation detectors. So he may have performed some service, but I can find no reason to think that he worked out there on a flying saucer.
I mean, I had to wonder whether this guy was making this stuff up, but then I see the phone book and I see the newspaper article, and I talked to people who worked with Bob at the lab and who said, in fact, that he did work on classified projects, yet no one can find any records of his background.
The people that I worked with, colleagues, the people I went to school with, obviously knew I was there, and people at Los Alamos, I was friends with, and people that worked under me and alongside of me knew I was there and, you know, cooperate what was going on, but, you know, officially, it's very difficult to get information for the people in charge.
To further prove his claims, Lazar agreed to take a polygraph test, which he passed.
The thing that is interesting about polygraph is that if you're embellishing or if you don't completely believe what you're saying, it is very, very easy to detect. All it really will tell you is that the individual believes with 100% conviction that what he's reporting is exactly as he recalls and as he believes it to be. And that clearly was the case with Bob Lazar. Now, could his perception have been a bit askew? Yes, that's possible, but he clearly wasn't lying.
I think Bob is even open to the possibility that perhaps he had been used in some sort of misinformation or disinformation campaign. I mean, look at him. He has a pirate flag floating on his house. He races jet cars. He likes fast women. He likes guns. He's technically capable, so in that sense, he may be perfect for this kind of a program. Technically capable, scientifically knowledgeable, and yet completely discreditable at a moment's notice. If you wanted to test public reaction to a story about Area 51 and then suddenly discredit it afterwards, Bob may have been the most qualified person in the country.
Lazar says that on one occasion he was escorted into the flying disc that he saw in the hangar to analyze its propulsion system.
It was obviously made to be piloted by something smaller than the average human being, very cramped in there.
What were the size of these seats that were in there?
The seats were very small. I'd say about 1/3 to 1/4 the size of a normal human seat. A lot of people say, boy, it must have been exciting to go in there, and I always say it wasn't. It was a very ominous feeling. I know it sounds silly, but it's so unearthly in there.
You have spoken to someone who's actually seen a UFO under a tarpaulin at Area 51.
I have. I've spoken to several people who've seen UFOs or disc-shaped craft out there. There was a woman who was a secretary for a major defense contractor at the Nevada test site who worked on nuclear programs, who told me that she had sat in on conversations between military and civilian contractors at which the Roswell case had been discussed, at which it had been discussed taking some Roswell material to Area 51. The level of secrecy during those meetings was great. Afterward, they'd take the ribbons out of the typewriter she was typing on. She was ready to tell me about this, and I had this conversation with her on the phone. The next day after this conversation takes place, she's visited by two men who say that they work for the company she used to work for, reminding her that she is still under a security oath, told her, we know that you do a lot of traveling back and forth, a lot of long drives between Las Vegas and LA. We'd hate for something to happen to you or your family. No interview. I mean, it happened again and again and again. Same scenario.
Lazar says that in addition to being shown inside the disc, he actually saw it take off from the lake bed.
I was brought into the hangar for one of the short duration tests, and the craft was already outside on the lake bed, and that was pretty much of a marvelous sight. It's a huge thing. It's like seeing a house lift off the ground. You can't imagine the energy involved to do that. Because of the extremely high energy output and the fact that the outside of the craft is used as a conductor, that does ionize the air. And the crafts do, as a byproduct of this, glow at night, much like a fluorescent tube will light up. So, you know, bright, strange, jumping lights in the sky, that does explain that.
Would you categorically say there is no way that humans could have built the craft that you saw?
Absolutely. I will categorically deny that. Well, I don't know. How exactly should I put that? I guess I can just say it straight out. There is no way that any government on this earth could produce that craft, period. And I defy anyone to argue that point.
One of the big questions that's hung over this whole story is whether Lazar saw a man-made flying disc and not an alien spacecraft.
A lot of these craft which are being developed in secrecy in the United States are tested at night, and one can imagine that seen through kind of half-closed eyes, something like an F-117 stealth fighter or a B-2 bomber, side-on or front-on, would look remarkably like, say, a flying saucer or a UFO.
You see an F-117, or you see tacit blue, or you see a B-2. Particularly if you see it from some fairly unusual angle, you're going to have a very hard time relating that to conventional aircraft. Some of these things can look very strange indeed. So, you know, an unusual but decidedly terrestrial aircraft can certainly present the appearance of a disc from many angles.
I think for anyone who's been out into the western United States and seen the kind of place it is and let their imaginations run riot a bit, it is possible to imagine in these vast test areas technologies which are highly exotic, highly revolutionary, and would change the way we feel about science today. However, to say that that is alien science derived from beyond this world, I think is something which is just, it is unbelievable. It's too much to absorb.
Do you think that some of the truth certainly lies out there in the middle of the Nevada desert at Groom Lake?
I would expect that some of the truth may very well lie out in the desert near Groom Lake. It's the right place for some of it to be. It's isolated, it's under control, it's high security. I don't think we've yet scratched the surface on what's happening out there with regard to flying saucers.
According to Lazar, the craft that they were secretly testing out in the desert at night used an exotic anti-gravity propulsion system.
The reactor itself was an incredibly advanced system. This was an antimatter reactor. This is something we could only dream of having, something that could put out huge amounts of power that rivals several nuclear power plants running at capacity. What happens is a great gravity distortion is created and you're essentially bending space toward the craft. The craft becomes part of that space, and then when the reactors, or when the gravity amplifiers are shut down, the craft is essentially where it was focused. It's a very difficult thing to grasp. It happens virtually instantaneously because of the fact that gravity distorts time, and if you're bending space and time along with it, when you wind back up in that place, you're there between the ticks of a clock.
Looking at nighttime video films out in the test site area, we've seen video of craft that were luminous, that would move across the sky as if it was skipping a stone across water, or sort of a sewing machine effect. What we see across the screen are a series of lights, of dashes of light, as the object moves from point A to point B. Therefore, we are seeing what you might call a shadow effect of the propulsion mechanism at work.
Bob Lazar is not the only person who's come forward and claimed to have worked out at the base on flying discs. Former US Marines test pilot Bill Uhouse worked out at Groom Lake and other top-secret locations for more than 40 years, working for the Pentagon and civilian contractors on a variety of highly classified projects, including, he says, a flying disc recovered from a crash in Kingman, Arizona in May 1953. He said that he'd been cleared to do this interview and to discuss certain information, but asked us not to show his face.
What were you actually working on out there?
One of the things I worked on was a flying disc simulator. It was designed in New Mexico by a separate staff that built it in parallel with the actual craft that they had intended to fly. The purpose of the simulator was to train pilots to fly this strange-looking craft. The simulator was a 10-meter round disc. The skin was made of boron composite material, not unlike that you see on the F-117.
How did you know how to build the simulator?
Essentially, there weren't any plans. The plans were generated as we constructed it. And there was a process there that took quite a while for us to even understand the concept way back in the 50s.
Uhouse says that Lazar did work at Area 51.
I think Bob is saying exactly what he knows, and I know a little bit about Bob from a different standpoint than a lot of the people know and what's been written about him, but Bob Lazar is not lying as far as his place and position and the activity he was involved with at the time, although some of it, he couldn't recall, but there's a lot of reasons why Bob was hired, number one. Here's the thing. Take a guy like Bob, send him out there, somebody said, aliens, blah, 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 blah. All of a sudden you're thinking about 9 alien crafts. They may have not been 9 alien crafts.
Bravo 7014, contact departure, good day.
Do you believe that the government has recovered alien spacecraft?
I have no doubts whatsoever that the United States has actually recovered a number of extraterrestrial vehicles.
And what do they do with them?
I think that since 1947, there have been efforts to try and duplicate the technology, what is referred to as reverse engineering. And I don't know how far they've got, but some reports indicate that we've actually been test flying within a limited area actual alien vehicles or terrestrial vehicles, United States vehicles which have been made using alien technology.
Could these not just be military aircraft?
Well, I think it's quite possible some of them are military aircraft. I've heard from very reliable sources, including a leading specialist on unmanned aerial vehicles, that we have developed some disc-shaped platforms for aerial reconnaissance, some quite small, maybe some larger, which are being utilized by the Americans and have been built by the Americans.
That's 6389 Delta Las Vegas Tower, runway 19 left taxi into position and hold traffic crossing downfield. Thank you, sir. 89 Delta.
Was it a hard secret to keep?
It was a virtually impossible secret to keep, but I did play by the rules, and it caused a lot of problems. It caused problems in my family life. I mean, imagine being married at the time, and you get a call, perhaps at night, and a strange voice on the phone. Okay, you disappear, you can't tell your wife who it was on the phone, where you're going, and you come back, sometime early in the morning. I mean, what is she going to think?
Unaware of where he was going every day and being absent from home for long periods, Bob's relationship with his wife had deteriorated badly. This was seen as a potential security risk out at the base.
My wife was having an affair with someone else, so they viewed that as a potential emotional instability, and they no longer wanted me coming out until things were cleared up, either for it to break up or heal or whatever, but that's what put the brakes on everything there.
And did they then stop calling you? Did you get very frustrated about that?
Yeah, then I began to wonder, boy, now they've given me all this information and everything's come to a dead stop, what's going on? And that's when I began to be concerned, and then that's when I said, now it's becoming important that some other people know what was going on.
As the silence turned from days to weeks, he finally decided to tell his wife and closest friends just what he'd been doing.
Were you aware of the security implications?
I was quite aware of what could happen, but I was also aware that these guys would go to any extent to keep their secret, and certainly not have someone that was on the inside running around, and I didn't think it was beyond them at all to make me disappear, who knows, I know it sounds more like a movie, but I didn't think it was beyond their capability to kill me, just to stop the word from getting out.
Bob knew the test flight schedule for the discs and took his wife, his best friend Gene Huff, and another friend John Lear out to the desert near the base on a Wednesday night in March 1989.
Huh, it started coming in too.
How far away can that thing pick up stuff if it's like overhead, like up in the air?
Overhead, 300 miles.
Jeez. So it could be anywhere in these guys.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, that sounds military to me. Yeah, I bet you that's what this is. We got. Oh.
You see that?
Whoa. Yeah, what was that? Did you see that light just come on over there? I was looking right at it.
Yeah.
Here, let me check it out.
Well, that was a shooting star. Right above it was a meteor too. No, there's a steady light.
No, it's a steady light that just came on.
Without any kind of...
No, this one right over the range here. It wasn't there, and then I was looking right there, and it blinked on.
It's very bright. That's brighter than a star.
Yeah. Huh, doesn't look like landing lights.
We got the light clear now, sir. We figured out what the problem is, and whatever that heading is, we're ready for it.
Huh, interesting.
Okay, just change course.
White light?
Yeah.
Yeah, he's coming at us.
What did you see when you were out there?
Shortly after the flight time that I had recorded, white light came up. Well, not a white light, it was actually more of an amber light. Came up off the ground and hovered, and then began doing radical step maneuvers and darting from one side of the sky to the other, doing some impossible flight characteristics.
Do you think what you saw over the desert that night was an alien spacecraft?
Could I identify it as an ET craft without Bob's help? No, it would have been like I said, an elliptically shaped saucer doing, just doing moves that we're not capable of, but I could not say that, no, this wasn't some advanced Earth technology. We got the light clear now, sir. We figured out what the problem is, and whatever that heading is, we're ready for it.
That would be a UFO. It's not blinking, it's not conforming to any sort of FAA lighting regulations, and there you're looking at it. That's like a typical UFO. If it was red, it would be real typical, because that's what most people report, is red lights like that are solid color. I don't think that's landing lights, because it's curved already and we're still looking at it. Looks like he's curving back. Here he comes. That is a typical military UFO. There you go.
This small group went back to see 2 more Wednesday night flight tests, but on the 3rd trip, they were spotted, caught, and arrested. Bob was taken to Indian Springs Air Force Base and interrogated.
That interrogation was about as intense as you can possibly get, right stopping short of shooting me in the head.
What were they saying to you?
Everything up to and including that, we can absolutely kill you right now and there'd be no one looking for you at all. And I mean, everything. They threatened my wife, they threatened to kill my wife, they said they'd stop at nothing. They said they thought they made that very clear. They couldn't believe that I had taken anyone out there to show them that, much less left with information like the flight test data, and wanted to know what else I had said, who else I had told specifically. They were crazy. They really were. They were completely out of control.
After this interrogation at Indian Springs Air Force Base, Bob says that he was put under constant surveillance by security personnel. His phones were tapped, his movements were monitored, and he often found his car followed by military helicopters. Worried about what might happen to him and angry about how he was being treated, he decided to hit back and approached a local TV station about an interview.
I thought, if I did an interview in silhouette, it would be kind of pushing back a bit. Where say, you guys stop, and not saying too much, but just saying enough just to let them know that I'm pushing back a bit and then lay off, or, you know, it's going to get worse. It was really the only thing I could do.
Did you get any calls from the military or from former workers to say, what the hell are you doing?
Right after the interview aired, Dennis Mariani, who was my supervisor, called, and all he said was, do you have any idea what we're going to do to you now? And that was the end of the phone call. That was the last, well, really second to last communication I had with him. And, you know, then I decided, well, you know, that's it. And really just said everything that I had seen and done, and just wanted to divorce the entire situation.
Even now, more than 20 years later, the jury is still out on Bob Lazar and his claims about his work out at Groom Lake. It's a fascinating story which he's stuck to for more than 2 decades. And although many dismiss it as pure fantasy, the fact is that some of his credentials did check out. In addition, his former employers and even the tax authorities were caught covering up and refusing to release information on him. Why would they do that unless there was something to hide? One thing is for certain, if he is telling the truth, then we're all in for some shocking revelations in the decades to come.
Is the government ever going to say, you know, we've been lying to you for 40 or 50 years? Not a chance. I believe they'd stage an event that is much more like what they do. They'll take a big cargo plane or C-130 or something, take one of the old discs that they've you know, analyzed time and time again and finished with, go up to a high altitude and push it out the back and then go fly away and say, oh look, the first disc has crashed, you know, here's a flying saucer. I mean, I can almost guarantee you that's the route they'd take.
There's nothing on the radar from the other...
Certainly there are a lot of questions about Bob's background that have not been satisfactorily answered. But there's too much that Bob knows, I think, that couldn't be explained any other way. He knows about the layout of the base. He knew about people who were involved in security checks. He knew when and where the test flights were going to take place because he took people out there 3 weeks in a row and they videotaped the tests. How did he know this stuff if he in fact did not have some kind of inside knowledge?
Do you think he'd make a good conduit of information? I mean, essentially a patsy.
Yes, I do. I think it's quite likely that Lazar was set up, perhaps to knowing that he would give out this information.
It's likely to be a very long time before we discover what is actually being done out at Groom Lake now. They seem to wait anything from 15 to 20 years or more after something has been retired before they acknowledge its existence.
This airplane was built, designed almost 40 years ago. 40 years before that, the hottest thing flying was a Seversky P-35. 40 years before that, it was a balloon. So the technology has not stood still. So there's a very good possibility that we are looking at man-made transportation for the 21st century.
It's been so hopelessly polluted that I'm not sure we will ever get to the bottom of this story, and that's sad. I suspect that whatever was out there, discs, alien or not, have now been moved to some other location, and we may never find them again.
There might have been reason 40 years ago to believe that people couldn't handle the idea of alien visitation. I don't think that's true anymore. I think we're far more sophisticated now.
Do you regret having screwed up at S4 and taking your friends there and blowing your security cover, because you could still be working on UFOs today?
Yes and no. Yes, at times I'd like to be able to go back in time and played along with the game and not have done anything, and perhaps to this day still be working on them, because I did feel privileged and it was fascinating work once you can get around all the oppressive military security, and maybe we would have stumbled on something, and yeah, it would have been fascinating. I thought UFOs were pretty much a figment of someone's imagination. I didn't believe in them. I wasn't interested in them. Of course, I'm not even interested in them now. But I certainly do believe in them now.
Years ago, and you go, God damn, those guys had it right. And why are we so behind 2,000 years later? Why haven't... But I think it's cyclical. I think that, certainly in America, this post-war generation was all about strength and not showing weakness and winning, and that works to a certain degree. But I think a more vulnerability, a more getting your arms around your successes and your failures really makes for a better partner, a better dad, a better son.
Thanks for joining us for our weekly film show. We're starting with an out-of-this-world experience with Brad Pitt.
James and I both had an age where, we probably lived more than we have left. Mm-hmm. And you start thinking about impermanence, you start thinking of your own personal values. My style is I'm interjecting some point of view of mine usually.
Which point of view were you interjecting here?
Well,
I'm listening to you.
Yeah, you are too, and you're calling me out on it too.
In a good way.
No, it's fair. It's all fair. It's really coming to terms with knowing yourself, a full acceptance of yourself, instead of living with regrets or the grief we carry, the loneliness we carry.
And so you brought an authenticity to the role that perhaps you couldn't have done if you weren't being open with yourself in real life.
Yes, I think that's bang on. And it is the universal human experience.
Ad Astra is set in a not-so-distant future that isn't beyond the realm of possibility.
Astronaut Roy McBride has tamped down his feelings to an absolutely ridiculous degree, which means we see his wife walk out on him early on. His pulse is low. He never gets flustered. Many American movies are about the importance of work, how crucial it is to work for a living, and how you should do what the boss says, except when you're an anti-hero who doesn't do what anybody says. Roy navigates literally both inner and outer space. He believed his father was dead. The government tells him his dad is out there somewhere and may have gone rogue in a way that threatens not only Earth, but the whole solar system. I hate when that happens. I like the clipped military language, the need to know doling out of information, and the fact that he goes to the edge of the universe. There's no souvenir stand there, but there is something worth discovering.
As we journey to the ends of the solar system with him, we also take a deep dive into the astronaut's psyche.
Having grown up in an era where we're taught to be strong, not show weakness, don't be disrespected, and so on and so forth, that there's a certain value in that as far as entering in the world and holding your own, but there's also a barrier that's created with this kind of embracing of the self, because you're denying to a sense those pains or those, I guess, the things you feel shame, whether real or imagined, the regrets in one's life, you know, it's denied in a sense. And so looking back again, I think we were asking the question, is there a better definition for us? Is actually being more open provide you with I guess a better relationship with your loved ones?
And I feel like you would really feel for Brad Pitt in that instance. So how does the movie sort of examine that father-son relationship?
You know, this movie is performing very well, but I did find that particular relationship kind of problematic. It's shot like it's a 1950s sci-fi, but it's set far in the future where the moon is colonized. And Tommy Lee Jones's character, we only see him through video and from the past.
Either we are not alone in the universe, meaning aliens, or we are completely and utterly alone. And either outcome is equally terrifying. That was a really interesting concept.
We live in a world filled with falsehoods. I mean, marketing, advertising, politics are filled with all sorts of falsehoods. It will lead us to a conclusion sometimes that there is no such thing as truth. And that's what happens sometimes, is we want to fit into any kind of group or sector so badly that when things come up that we don't agree with or we know are incorrect, we just hold our silence and we don't say anything. I'll never forget sitting next to a young man on a flight. He was just a freshman in college. His mom's a college professor, and I'm sitting there, it's evening flight, and I'm reading my Bible, and he says, "Is that the Bible?" And I said, "Yeah." He says, "Are you a Christian?" I said, "Yeah." He says, "Yeah, I could never be a Christian." I said, "Why not?" He says, "Because I believe in evolution." And I said, "Of course you do." He said, "What do you mean?" I said, "Has anybody ever presented you with any other option except evolution? Have you ever been taught anything else? Has anybody talked about intelligent design?" Well, he goes, "No." I said, "Let me give you a list of books." And so I started writing all of Michael Behe's books on, Darwin's Black Box and the Edge of Evolution and Devolving Darwin, all these great books that he's written, basically saying, not as a Christian, but saying it as a secular scientist, the idea of evolution just doesn't work. It's got so many problems chemically, biologically, genetically. We know that it just doesn't work. It can't be the means by which the world came into existence or creatures came into existence. It just is impossible. And it's interesting how the man gets vilified for saying that. But at the end of the day, people simply repeat what they think is going to be the popular response. And we become people who are silent about a lot of things. When people say to me, "Well, I don't know how to argue or to answer those questions," well, let me suggest a novel approach. Start studying. You see, I think the most dangerous form of lying is when we make efforts to accommodate the culture by withholding or even compromising what we believe to be true. Because truth always matches up with reality. And when you believe a lie, one day reality will crash into your world and create great destruction. I love what the late economist Milton Friedman once said about reality. He said, "You can have any facts you want, but you can't have your own reality." And he's talking about an economic form. You can't run multiple trillion-dollar deficits and not have the chickens come home to roost sooner or later. But it's also true that you can't ignore the laws of God. You can't ignore the truth of God and expect that it's going to work out for you well. Reality is going to ruin your party. And we have abundant historical evidence to see how that has happened over and over and over again. As the psalmist said, the nation who forgets God will perish. History has proved that to be true repeatedly. You see, I think the Apostle Paul saw the day we're in coming. He warned the Ephesian elders who were themselves in a very intense cultural pressure. He knew they were under pressure to tone down their message. I start with one simple question. Why do you believe that's true? Why do you believe that's true? I find most people start falling apart real quickly because they have never really thought of it. They're just repeating what they heard somebody else say. But also you have to be prepared to say, you know what? Let me tell you why I do believe what I believe. And that makes all the difference.
We thank you for watching this video and ask you to spread the news. Put this video on your social network or link to it so that you can be part of the anonymous movement. Together we are strong. Together we are anonymous.